The Grand Hall of the Galactic Coalition was designed to make a human feel small, and on this particular Tuesday, it was succeeding brilliantly. The ceiling vaulted 3,000 feet overhead, a dome of transparent plunder glass that magnified the light of the trinary suns until the air itself seemed to shimmer with gold dust. Beneath it, the Senate tiers rose in concentric circles of white marble and velvet, packed with 5,000 delegates from 1,000 different worlds. They were all looking down at the center of the floor, where Elias Thorne stood in a circle of silence. Elias adjusted the cuffs of his tunic. They were synthetic silk, charcoal gray, and the only dignity he had left. His wrists were bound not by metal but by a gravimetric dampener that made lifting his hands feel like bench-pressing a starship engine. Senator Vrax, a bloated amphibianoid from the core worlds, floated in his hoverpod 10 feet above Elias. His voice boomed through the hall, amplified by acoustics designed to turn whispers into commandments. "We find the accused guilty of high treason against the Stability Pact," Vrax rumbled, his throat sac inflating with self-righteous air. "Guilty of sabotage, guilty of inciting border skirmishes in the Kailara sector, and guilty of moral corruption incompatible with the values of this coalition." Elias did not flinch. He looked up, squinting against the glare. He knew the script. He had written similar speeches for half the men condemning him, back when he was the most sought-after strategist in the sector. The irony was not lost on him. He had spent 10 years teaching these politicians how to bury the truth, and now they were using his own shovel to bury him. The evidence was flawless. It had to be. It was fabricated by the Ares Consortium, a group of corporate warlords who treated war crimes like tax write-offs. Elias had found the ledger that proved they were starting wars just to sell the reconstruction contracts. He had planned to leak it. He had been 12 hours too slow. Senator Vrax leaned forward. "The coalition is merciful. We do not execute our own, for that is the way of barbarians, and instead, we grant you a chance to reflect on your sins. You are hereby stripped of all rank, all assets, and all citizenship. You are sentenced to permanent exile." The chamber held its breath. Exile was usually a cushy retirement on a garden world with a perimeter fence. "You will be transported immediately to Varos 9, Vrax said. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. It sounded like the rustle of dry leaves. Varos 9. The name was a ghost story. It was a planet located in the ass end of the outer rim, a biological blender where the atmosphere was toxic half the day and the wildlife was lethal the other half. The survival rate for drop pods was 50%. The survival rate for the first week was less than 1%. It was a death penalty disguised as a travel itinerary. Elias felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach, but he forced a smile. It was a sharp, dangerous smile, the one he used when the negotiation table had just been overturned. "Varos 9, Elias said, his voice surprisingly steady without amplification. "I hear the sunsets are to die for." There was no laughter, only the hum of the gravity lift engaging. The floor beneath him dropped away, and Elias Thorne descended into the dark underbelly of the Capitol, leaving the light behind. The processing center smelled of ozone and despair. They took everything: his datapad, his signet ring, his shoes. They gave him a pair of magnetic-soled boots that looked like they had been scavenged from a corpse, a canvas flight suit that smelled of mildew, and a survival pack that felt suspiciously light. A corporate liaison stood behind a pane of reinforced glass, watching Elias dress. The man was young, immaculately groomed, and wearing the Ares Consortium pin on his lapel. "We intercepted your final broadcast," the liaison said smoothly. "The one you tried to send to the press." Elias zipped up the flight suit. I assume you deleted it. On the contrary, the liaison said, we improved it. Look, a holographic screen flickered to life on the wall. It showed a deep fake of Elias, perfect down to the slight tick in his left eye. The digital Elias looked disheveled, manic. I did it for the money, the digital Elias screamed, his voice cracking. I sold out the border patrols because the Kailara paid better. I hate this coalition. I hate all of you. The real Elias watched the screen with a detached professional appreciation. It was sloppy work, really. The lighting was a bit too dramatic, the dialogue a bit too villainous. But the public would eat it up because they wanted a monster. They needed a reason to hate the man who had pointed out the cracks in their golden walls. You have no imagination, Elias muttered to the glass. The liaison smiled. We do not need imagination. Mr. Thorne, we have gravity. Enjoy the trip. 2 guards shoved him into the drop pod. It was a rusted cylinder, barely large enough for a man to sit with his knees against his chest. The hatch hissed shut, sealing him in darkness. He felt the clunk of the docking clamps releasing. Then came the lurch of the magnetic rail. Elias closed his eyes. He counted backward from 10, 9, 8. The pod was fired out of the transport ship like a bullet from a gun. 7, 6. The G-force hit him like a physical blow, flattening his lungs against his ribs. 5, 4. He wondered if the heat shield would hold. It would be cheaper for them if it did not. 3, 2, 1. Atmospheric entry. The world became noise, a screaming, tearing roar that vibrated through his bones. The temperature inside the pod spiked. Warning lights flashed red, bathing his face in the color of blood. The pod spun, tumbling through the turbulence of Varos 9's upper atmosphere. Elias did not pray. He calculated. Based on the vibration, the port stabilizer was loose. Based on the heat, the insulation was failing on the starboard side. He needed to lean left. It was ridiculous. The idea that shifting his body weight could influence a falling metal coffin. But he did it anyway. He jammed his shoulder against the left wall of the pod and gritted his teeth. The impact was not a crash. It was an earth-shattering collision that blacked out the world for an indeterminate amount of time. When he woke up, he was hanging upside down. Blood was dripping from his nose into his eye. The silence was heavy, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal. Elias groaned and hit the manual release on his harness. He dropped 2 feet to the ceiling of the pod, which was now the floor. He kicked the hatch. It was jammed. He kicked it again, putting his back into it, screaming with effort. The metal groaned and popped open. Elias crawled out and fell into the dirt. He gasped, his lungs burning. The air was thin, metallic, and tasted like copper pennies. He looked up. The sky was a bruised purple, streaked with veins of sickly green lightning that made no sound. 2 moons hung low on the horizon, one shattered and leaking debris into a planetary ring system. He was in a valley of black glass. The ground was not dirt, but jagged obsidian shards that crunched under his boots. And the plants, if you could call them that, were nightmares of geometry. Towering crystalline stalks rose 30 feet into the air, their leaves sharp enough to shave with. They hummed, a low-frequency vibration that made his teeth ache. Elias checked his wrist. No watch. He checked his pockets. Empty. He turned back to the pod. Smoke was pouring from the engine compartment. He had minutes before it blew, or before the smoke attracted whatever lived here. He dove back inside. He grabbed the survival pack. He ripped a panel off the dashboard, yanking out wires until he found the emergency transmitter. It was a brick of a device, old tech, probably barely capable of reaching orbit. But it was something. He grabbed a coil of wire, a flare gun with 1 flare, and a ration bar that looked like compressed sawdust. He scrambled out of the wreckage and ran. He made it 50 yards before the pod exploded. The shockwave knocked him flat, sending a spray of black glass over him. Elias lay there for a moment, listening to the ringing in his ears. He was alive. He was alone. He was on a planet that was actively trying to kill him. He started to laugh. It was a dry, hacking sound. "Okay," he wheezed, standing up and brushing the glass from his flight suit. Phase 1 complete. Survive the landing. Phase 2. Do not get eaten. He started walking. He did not know where he was going, but standing still felt like dying. The environment of Varos 9 was not just hostile. It was aggressive. The wind picked up, carrying grains of sand that were magnetically charged. They clung to his suit, getting heavier with every step. The razor flora seemed to turn toward him as he passed, the crystalline leaves pivoting like radar dishes. He walked for 3 hours. The suns began to set, plunging the world into a twilight that made the shadows stretch and warp. He saw the storm coming from the north. It was a wall of red dust, reaching from the ground to the clouds. Lightning danced inside it like trapped spirits. Elias scanned the terrain. The glass valley was flat, offering no cover. But to the east, the ground rose into a jagged ridge of rock. He ran. The magnetic sand was dragging at his boots now, making every step a labor. The storm was faster. The wind began to scream, tearing at his clothes. He reached the ridge just as the first wave of the storm hit. The sand scoured his face, drawing blood. He scrambled up the rocks, looking for a crevice, a cave, anything. He saw a dark opening about 20 feet up. He clawed his way toward it, his fingernails tearing on the stone. The wind tried to peel him off the rock face. He threw himself into the hole and rolled. He hit a hard dirt floor. The roar of the storm outside was instantly muffled, though the ground still vibrated with its power. Elias lay on his back, staring up at the stone ceiling. He was exhausted. He was thirsty. He heard the click of a weapon being cocked. Elias froze. He slowly turned his head. The cave was not empty. It was inhabited. A dozen pairs of eyes stared back at him from the shadows. They were a motley collection of species. A four-armed reptilian crouched by a fire that burned with blue chemical flames. A humanoid with skin-like bark leaned against the wall, and standing directly over him, pointing a spear tipped with a shard of electrified glass at his throat, was a creature that looked like a cross between a wolf and a nightmare. "Get up," the wolf creature snarled in broken galactic standard. "Give us water, or give us meat." Elias slowly raised his hands. "I have a ration bar that tastes like despair," he said, "but I am told I am quite stringy." The creature jabbed the spear closer. The electricity arced, singing the hair on Elias's neck. "Drop the pack," the creature commanded. Elias unbuckled the survival pack and slid it across the floor. The creature kicked it toward the fire, never taking the spear off Elias's throat. "Now," the creature said, baring teeth that were filed to points. "We see if the soft skin bleeds red or blue." "Wait," a voice said. The voice was cool, melodic, and carried an authority that cut through the tension like a scalpel. A figure stepped out from the deeper shadows at the back of the cave. Elias blinked. She was unexpected. She was humanoid, tall and lithe, with skin the color of twilight, a pale, iridescent violet. Her hair was a stark white, braided tightly against her skull. She wore armor pieced together from scavenged tech and local leather. But she wore it with the casual grace of someone who had been born in a uniform. Her eyes were striking, solid gold, with no pupils, glowing faintly in the dim light. She moved toward them, her steps making no sound on the dirt. "He is not a scavenger," she said, looking down at Elias. "Look at his hands, soft, No calluses. Look at his suit. Clean. Until an hour ago. He is a fresh drop. The wolf creature hesitated. Fresh drop means fresh supplies. Fresh drop means a beacon might still be active on him, she countered. You kill him. You might bring a recovery drone down on our heads. Do you want to risk the enclave for a mouthful of meat? The creature growled, but lowered the spear. The woman looked at Elias. Her expression was unreadable, her face a mask of beautiful indifference. Stand up, she said. Elias scrambled to his feet. He dusted himself off, trying to regain some semblance of composure. Thank you. I thought I was dinner. She did not smile. You still might be. I just prefer my dinner not to summon an airstrike. She walked around him, inspecting him like one might inspect a used vehicle. She pulled a small scanner from her belt and ran it over him. No beacon, she said, mostly to herself. Just a standard exile tag. She looked him in the eye. I am Vera. This is my sector. If you want to stay in this cave, you follow 3 rules. 1. You contribute. 2. You do not ask questions. 3. If the storm breaches the seal, you are the first one we throw out to plug the hole. Elias raised an eyebrow. Charming hospitality. I am Elias. I do not care, Vera said. Names are for people who survive the first week. You are just a statistic waiting to happen. She turned and walked back to the fire, sitting down on a crate with a fluid-controlled motion. She began cleaning a complex-looking pistol, her movements precise and practiced. Elias watched her. She was not a scavenger. The way she held herself, the way she assessed threats, that was military training, high level, intelligence or special operations. What was someone like that doing in a hole in the ground on a Deathworld? He realized he was staring. She looked up, her golden eyes narrowing. Stop analyzing me, she said quietly. It is loud. Elias smirked. I am just admiring the leadership style. Very motivational. He walked over to a corner of the cave that seemed unoccupied. He sat down, his back against the cold stone. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him shaking. He looked at the battered transmitter he had salvaged. It was a heavy, archaic thing. He turned it over in his hands. The storm outside raged on. The exiles around the fire ignored him, arguing over the contents of his survival pack. Elias felt a crushing weight of isolation settle over him. He had been a man of influence, a man who whispered in the ears of kings. Now he was nobody, just another piece of refuse thrown away by the galaxy. He needed to do something. He needed to hear a voice that wasn't threatening to eat him. He clicked the power switch on the transmitter. A red light blinked. It had power. It was probably only broadcasting on short-range frequencies, bouncing off the local relays and maybe, just maybe, hitting the pirate satellites that orbited the rim. He pressed the record button. Testing. Testing, Elias said softly. Is this thing on? Vera looked over from the fire. Her eyes were sharp. Elias ignored her. He held the microphone close to his lips. This is Elias Thorne, formerly of the Galactic Strategic Command, currently of a cave. He chuckled. It was a dark, brittle sound. He looked at the ceiling, imagining the senators sitting in their golden hall, drinking wine that cost more than a starship. They wanted him to die quietly. They wanted him to disappear. Spite, cold and hard, crystallized in his chest. Day 1, Elias said into the mic, his voice gaining strength. Location, Varos 9. Current status, alive against all actuarial odds. He looked at the wolf creature, who was currently gnawing on his ration bar wrapper. I have been exiled to a death world, Elias said. The travel brochure failed to mention the acid winds and the neighbors who want to eat my kidneys. But that is fine. If I am going to be here, I might as well make myself useful. He leaned back, a grim smile spreading across his face. They exiled me to a death world. Fine. I will send back a tourist guide. He hit the stop button, across the cave. Vera watched him. She had stopped cleaning her gun. She was studying him with a new intensity. She had seen men break on this planet. She had seen them scream, cry, and curl into balls. She had never seen one turn his execution into a monologue. It unsettled her. It smelled like trouble. Elias closed his eyes, clutching the transmitter like a lifeline. He did not know that his signal had skipped off a passing asteroid miner's relay. He did not know that the encrypted burst was already being picked up by a listening post 3 sectors away. And he certainly did not know that 20 feet away. A small device in Vera's pocket gave a silent vibration. Vera slipped her hand into her pocket and checked the readout. It was a coded burst from off-world, a priority channel she had not heard from in 2 years. The message was brief. Target confirmed, Elias Thorne. Status, exiled. Directive, confirm termination or secure for extraction. The shadows are watching. Vera looked at the man sleeping against the wall, clutching his radio. She looked at the knife in her boot. Confirm termination or secure for extraction. She let out a slow breath. Looks like you survived the night. Statistic, she whispered, but only just. Outside, the storm howled, tearing at the mountain, while the first transmission of the Deathworld tourist guide began its long, static-filled journey to the stars. The wind on Varos 9 did not just blow. It hunted. It shrieked through the canyons of obsidian glass with a sound like a dying turbine, carrying with it microscopic shards of silica that could flay a man to the bone in under an hour if his suit seals were not perfect. Elias Thorne lay flat on his stomach on a ridge overlooking the gray valley, his chin resting on the vibrating rock. His suit was taped together in 3 places with silver adhesive he had won in a card game against the 4-armed reptilian, a creature named Grix who turned out to be terrible at bluffing. Beside him, Vera was a statue of violet calm. She held a pair of macro binoculars to her eyes, scanning the herd of beasts moving through the valley floor below. They were massive things, 6-legged and covered in chitinous plating that shimmered with an oily sheen. They looked like tanks made of meat. Tell me what you see, Vera said. Her voice was low, barely audible over the wind. Elias adjusted his own scavenged goggles. I see about 200 tons of bad attitude moving south. Look deeper, Vera said. This is not a sightseeing tour. This is a test. If you want to go on the salvage run tomorrow, I need to know you will not get us killed. Tell me the pattern. Elias frowned. He watched the herd. They were grazers, technically, though they grazed on rocks that contained trace metals. They moved in a swaying rhythmic mass. They are moving in a phalanx formation, Elias said after a moment. The larger bulls are on the perimeter. The calves are in the center. Standard defensive posture. Boring, Vera said. Look at the timing. Elias narrowed his eyes. He watched the lead bull. It took a step, paused, and struck the ground with its foreleg. Exactly 3 seconds later, the bull on the far left did the same. 3 seconds after that, the rear guard shifted. He began to count under his breath. 1, 2, 3. Shift. 1, 2, 3. Strike. It was not fluid. It was not organic. It was synchronized. They are moving on a grid, Elias whispered. It is mathematical. Look at the spacing between the flankers. It is exactly 15 meters, give or take a few inches. Animals do not measure distance that precisely. Vera lowered her binoculars. She looked at him, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something other than disdain in her golden eyes. It might have been respect. "The migration cycles on this planet are wrong," Elias said, his mind racing. "The storm yesterday started at 1400 hours exactly. The predator attacks on the perimeter fence happen every night at 0200. Nature is chaotic. Vera, this is engineered. Keep that to yourself," Vera said sharply. "Why? If this planet is a construct, because knowing that makes you dangerous to people who prefer secrets kept." Vera cut him off. "And we have enough things trying to kill us without adding the people who built the place to the list." She slid back from the ridge, signaling him to follow. "You passed. You can come on the run. But if you slow me down, I leave you for the crushers." Elias scrambled backward, keeping his profile low. "You know, most people just say congratulations." The salvage run yielded 3 power cells, a crate of freeze-dried protein blocks that tasted like wet cardboard, and a terrifying encounter with a burrowing worm that had tried to swallow Elias whole. He had survived only because Vera had tossed a seismic charge into the creature's gullet with the casual precision of someone tossing a coin into a fountain. Back in the safety of the cave, Elias sat in his corner, nursing a bruised shoulder and an ego that was only slightly less bruised. The enclave was buzzing. The other exiles were busy stripping the copper wiring from a crashed drone they had dragged in. Elias pulled his battered transmitter from his pack. He set it up on a crate, adjusting the frequency dial until the static cleared. Vera was across the cavern, sharpening her knife. She was always sharpening something. But she was watching him. She always watched him. He clicked the record button. "Welcome back to the end of the universe," Elias said, pitching his voice into that smooth, confident baritone that had once charmed senators out of billions of credits. "I am your host, Elias Thorne, and you are listening to the Deathworld Survival Guide." He paused for effect. "Today's episode is brought to you by the number 3, as in the 3 seconds you have to run when you hear the ground start to click. If you wait for 4 seconds, you become a footnote in the digestive history of a crusher beetle." He leaned into the mic, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "We are going to talk about the top 10 ways not to die before breakfast. Number 1, check your boots. On Varos 9, scorpions like the warmth of a human foot. And these scorpions do not just sting you, they dissolve you. It is a messy way to go, and it leaves a terrible stain on the carpet. Not that we have carpets. We have dirt and regret." He continued for 10 minutes, mixing genuine survival advice with biting satire about the coalition's incompetence. He described the edible fungus that looked exactly like the poisonous fungus, distinguishing them only by the fact that the edible one screamed when you bit it. When he finished, he clicked off the transmitter. He looked up to find Vera standing over him. "You are insane," she said. "I am bored," Elias corrected. "And I am annoyed. If I am going to be stuck here, I am going to complain about the service." Vera sat down on the crate opposite him. She reached out and took the transmitter. "Hey," Elias protested. "You are broadcasting on an open channel," Vera said, her fingers flying over the controls. "You are bouncing the signal off the main relay. The Coalition Sector Authority can triangulate this position in 5 minutes." She pulled a small, illegal-looking chip from her wrist gauntlet and slotted it into the transmitter's data port. "I am rerouting the signal through a pirate cluster in the asteroid belt," she said. "It will bounce through 3 different shadow servers before it hits the public net. They will think you are broadcasting from the nebula, not the planet's surface." Elias stared at her. Why help me? I thought I was just a statistic. Vera handed the transmitter back. The Enclave needs supplies. Your little show, it is getting attention. She was right. The broadcast had gone viral in the seedier corners of the galaxy, in the cantinas of the Outer Rim, on the mess decks of smuggler ships, and in the underground dorms of dissatisfied corporate workers. Elias Thorne had become a folk hero. They called him the Deathworld host. He was the man the Coalition could not kill, the voice laughing from the grave, and with the fame came the gifts. 2 days later, a drop pod slammed into the dust 3 miles from the cave. It was not a Coalition probe. It was a care package from a smuggler crew called the Red Suns. It contained medical nanites, real coffee, and a note that read, "Keep talking, funny man. You are the best thing on the comms." The chemistry between them was not a spark. It was a slow accumulation of friction. It happened in the quiet moments. It happened when the storms raged outside for 40 hours straight, trapping them in the dark with nothing to do but talk. Elias learned that Vera hated synthetic food because it had no texture. He learned that she knew how to dismantle a plasma rifle blindfolded but did not know how to tell a joke. Vera learned that Elias used humor as armor. She learned that under the arrogance and the sarcasm, there was a man who felt the weight of every life he had failed to save in the border wars. One night, she found him sitting by the fire trying to sew a tear in his flight suit. His hands, usually so expressive when he spoke, were clumsy with the needle. "Give it here," Vera said, taking the suit from him. She sat close to him, the firelight dancing on her violet skin. She worked the needle with quick, efficient movements. "You were intelligence, weren't you?" Elias asked softly. "Imperial intelligence." Vera paused. The needle hovered over the fabric. "I recognize the technique," Elias said. "The way you clear a room, the way you encode a signal. You are not a criminal. Vera, you are a soldier who ran out of a war." Vera did not look up. The Empire fell 20 years ago. The soldiers did not, Elias said. She resumed sewing, stabbing the needle through the tough canvas. "I was a jagged edge, Elias, a tool. They pointed me at problems and I removed them. When the Empire collapsed, the Coalition offered amnesty to anyone who would turn over their files. I turned over the files. They tried to execute me anyway." She bit the thread to cut it and handed the suit back to him. "We are both ghosts," she said. "We just haunt different graves." Elias looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the exhaustion lines around her eyes, the tightness in her jaw that never fully relaxed. He felt a sudden, fierce urge to make her laugh, not a polite chuckle, but a real laugh. "You know," Elias said, pulling the suit back on. "I once negotiated a peace treaty between 2 warring star systems by challenging their leaders to a drinking contest." Vera raised an eyebrow. "Who won?" "I did," Elias said. "But I woke up 3 days later in a zoo, wearing a sash that said Miss Universe." Vera stared at him for a second. Then, the corner of her mouth twitched. A small, suppressed snort escaped her. It was followed by a genuine smile, rare and transformative. "You are a liar," she said. "I am a storyteller," Elias corrected, grinning. "There is a difference, but the sash looked fantastic on me. The near miss happened a week later. They were deep in the crystalline forest, harvesting sap from the razor trees. The sap was highly conductive and could be used to power the Enclave's heaters. Elias was up in the branches, carefully tapping a vein. When the air pressure dropped, Vera shouted from the ground, "Drop! Now!" Elias did not argue. He let go of the branch and fell 10 feet, landing in a roll. "Gravity shear," Vera yelled. grabbing his arm and hauling him toward a rocky overhang. On Varos 9, the gravity was not constant. It fluctuated. Sometimes localized pockets of intense gravity would slam down like invisible hammers. They dove under the overhang just as the shear hit. The forest behind them flattened. Massive crystal trees shattered into millions of sparkling shards as the gravity in that specific zone spiked to 50 times the norm. The sound was deafening, a high-pitched scream of compressing matter. They were pressed together in the small crevice, bodies tangled. Elias could feel Vera's heart hammering against his chest. Her breath was hot on his neck. The shear lasted for 30 seconds, then vanished as quickly as it had come. Silence returned to the forest, broken only by the tinkling of falling crystal dust. Elias pulled back slightly, looking down at her. They were covered in dust, bruised, and alive. Vera looked up at him. Her pupils, usually invisible in the gold, seemed to dilate. The adrenaline was a drug, singing in their blood. "You are heavy," she whispered. "You are the one holding on to me," Elias murmured. His hand came up, almost of its own volition, to brush a smudge of dirt from her cheek. Her skin was incredibly soft, a stark contrast to the hard armor she wore. Vera did not pull away. Her gaze dropped to his lips, then back to his eyes. The air between them was charged, heavier than the gravity storm had been. Elias leaned in. Just an inch. Vera's hand tightened on his shoulder, her fingers digging in. She wanted this. He could see it in the raw hunger of her expression. She wanted to feel something other than survival. But then, the soldier came back. The mask slid into place. She shoved him back, hard. "No," she said, her voice rough. Elias hit the back of the cave, winded. "Vera, attachment is a liability," she snapped, scrambling out of the crevice and standing up. She refused to look at him. "If I care about you, I will hesitate. If I hesitate, we both die. Do not make me weak. Elias." She marched away through the shattered forest, her stride angry and fast. Elias watched her go. He touched his chest where she had pushed him. "Too late," he whispered. While Elias and Vera played their dangerous game on the surface, the galaxy above was shifting. The Coalition propaganda ministry was in a panic. They had tried to jam the signal, but the signal was Hydra-headed, popping up on a dozen different frequencies. They had tried to discredit him, releasing files claiming Elias was a pedophile, a terrorist, a madman. The public did not care. The public loved a disaster, especially one with a sense of humor. On the gleaming capital world of Ethelgard, in a boardroom that smelled of sanitized air and ruthless ambition, a new player entered the game. Director Kalen Vance of the Horizon Corporation stared at a holographic projection of Varos 9. Vance was a man who saw the universe as a series of assets waiting to be liquidated. He wore a white suit that cost more than the annual GDP of a small moon. "Look at the engagement numbers," Vance said, pointing a manicured finger at the data stream. 400 billion views. They are obsessed with this hellhole. "It is a death world, sir," his assistant said nervously. "It is a penal colony. It is an untapped market," Vance corrected. "People are bored. Safe is boring. They want danger. They want to feel alive, and they will pay a premium for it." He tapped the table. "Prepare the expedition fleet. We are not just going to watch the show, and we are going to buy the theater. We will turn Varos 9 into the ultimate extreme tourism destination. Safaris with armored hover tanks, luxury bunkers with a view of the acid storms." "But the exiles?" the assistant asked. Vance smiled, cold and shark-like. "They are just part of the local color, or target practice, whichever sells better." Back in the cave, the mood was tense. Vera was avoiding Elias. She spent her time by the comms array, decrypting the latest burst from her handlers. The message had come through that morning. It was from the faction that had hired her to find Elias. They called themselves the Restorationists, claiming they wanted to use Elias's strategic mind to overthrow the corrupt Senate. But Vera had dug deeper. She had cross-referenced the encryption keys with old imperial codes she still remembered. She sat in the dim light, the green text scrolling across her datapad screen. Her blood ran cold. The routing numbers for the Restorationists led back to a shell company, and that shell company was a subsidiary of the Ares Consortium. The same people who had framed Elias were the ones paying her to find him. They did not want to recruit him. They wanted to make sure he was dead. Or worse, they wanted to extract him to a black site and torture the location of the evidence he had hidden before his exile. And she was their unwitting bloodhound. Vera stared at the screen. She had been played. For 2 years, she thought she was working for a noble resistance. She was just a mercenary for the same monsters she hated. She looked across the cave. Elias was recording another segment, laughing as he described the cuddle vines that strangled you in your sleep. She had to tell him. She had to warn him. But before she could stand, the air pressure in the cave changed. A low rumble vibrated through the floor, growing louder until it shook the dust from the ceiling. It was not a storm. It was not a gravity shear. It was a sonic boom. Elias stopped recording. What was that? Vera was already moving, grabbing her rifle. Atmospheric entry, something big. They ran to the cave entrance. Outside, the sky was streaked with smoke. A ship, sleek, silver, and clearly not designed for military entry, was spiraling down toward the plateau 3 miles east. It was wobbling, one engine flaring erratically. "It is going to crash," Elias shouted. It hit the ground with a spray of dirt and rock, skidding for half a mile before coming to a rest near the edge of a sulfur lake. "Is it a supply drop?" Elias asked. Vera looked through her binoculars. She zoomed in on the hull. "No," she said, her voice hollow. The hatch of the crashed ship hissed open. An escape slide deployed. And down the slide came people. Not soldiers, not prisoners. There was a man in a bright neon safari jacket holding a camera. There was a woman in a shimmering evening gown clutching a terrified poodle. There was a group of people holding drinks, looking around with confused, excited expressions. Vera lowered the binoculars. She looked at Elias with a mixture of horror and accusation. "Read the side of the ship," she said. Elias squinted. On the side of the silver hull, painted in elegant gold letters, were the words, "Vance Extreme Tours. See the Deathworld before it sees you." Elias felt his stomach drop. "I think," he said weakly, "that I may have been too good at marketing." The tourists were waving. One of them fired a flare into the air, a bright, happy pink color that probably looked like a mating signal to every predator within 10 miles. "We have to leave them," Vera said. "They are dead anyway." "We can't," Elias said. He looked at the naive idiot stumbling around on the deadliest planet in the galaxy. "They are here because of me." He grabbed his pack. "Come on." Vera hesitated. This was suicide. This was against every protocol she had. But then she looked at Elias, saw the stubborn set of his jaw, the same look he had when he refused to let the system break him. She cursed in 3 different languages. "If we die," she said, racking the slide of her rifle, "I am going to kill you myself." They ran toward the crash site as the first roar of a predator echoed from the canyon walls, answering the dinner bell of the pink flare. The pink flare sputtered and died, leaving a trail of acrid smoke hanging in the sulphurous air. But the damage was done. To the local fauna, that flare was not a distress signal. It was a dinner bell ringing across the valley. Elias Thorne stood on the ridge, looking down at the crash site with a mixture of horror and hysterical amusement. The silver luxury shuttle, emblazoned with Vance Extreme Tours, sat steaming in the mud, and emerging from it were a dozen people who looked like they had dressed for a cocktail party rather than a survival situation. "This is your fault," Vera said. Her voice was flat, sharp as the obsidian knife at her belt. "I was being satirical," Elias protested, throwing his hands up. "When I said the acid rain is a great exfoliant, I assumed people would understand that meant it melts your face off. People do not understand satire." "Elias," Vera said, adjusting the scope on her rifle, "they understand entertainment. And you made this planet look like a theme park. We leave them." Elias looked at her. "Leave them? They will last 5 minutes." "Exactly," Vera said. "If we go down there, we expose the Enclave. We expose ourselves. That crash site is a beacon. Every predator within 20 miles is already moving toward it. If we intervene, we die with them." Elias looked back down. A young woman with bright blue hair was currently holding up a holographic recording drone, posing in front of the burning engine. A man in a suit was yelling at a rock. "They are idiots," Elias admitted, "but they are innocent idiots, and they are here because of me. I am going down there." Vera grabbed his arm. Her grip was iron. "You are a strategist. Elias, calculate the odds. 0.0% survival rate if we engage." Elias pulled his arm free. "Then I guess I need to improvise." He slid down the scree slope, his boots kicking up clouds of gray dust. Vera stood on the ridge for a long second, her golden eyes narrowing. She cursed, a harsh guttural sound in her native tongue, and followed him. The scene at the crash site was chaos wrapped in expensive fabric. The man in the suit, whose name turned out to be Galt, was currently threatening to sue the atmosphere. "This is unacceptable," Galt shouted, waving a data pad that had clearly lost its signal. "I paid for the Platinum Adventure package. I was promised a guided tour of the Crystal Forests, not a crash landing in a mud puddle." "Excuse me," Elias said, stepping into the circle of confused survivors. The young woman with the blue hair gasped. She spun around, her drone hovering over her shoulder. "Oh my stars," she squealed. "It is him. It is the host." She ran up to Elias, beaming. "I am Bex. I am your biggest follower on the net. I loved your episode about the carnivorous tumbleweeds. Do the line, do the line." Elias blinked. "Elias, the line? Say they exiled me to a Deathworld," Bex pleaded. Elias sighed. He looked at the smoking ship, the terrified poodles, and the encroaching shadows of the canyon. "They exiled me to a Deathworld," Elias muttered. "And apparently, they sent the circus to join me. Oh my God, I love it," Bex cheered, while her drone captured the moment in high definition. "Listen to me," Elias shouted, his voice snapping into the command tone he had used in war rooms. "You are all in immediate danger. This is not a simulation. That smoke is toxic. Those shadows are moving because things are hunting you. If you want to live, you shut up and follow me." "Who put you in charge?" Galt sneered. "I want to speak to the expedition leader." "The expedition leader is currently being digested by a sandworm about 50 yards that way," Vera said, stepping out of the gloom. She did not shout, but her voice carried a lethal weight that silenced the group instantly. She looked at the survivors with open contempt. "Grab the medical supplies and the water filters," Vera ordered. "Leave the luggage. Leave the pets unless you plan to eat them. Move." A tall, balding man in a pristine white jumpsuit stepped forward. He carried himself differently than the others. Less panic, more assessment. He picked up a heavy medical crate with surprising ease. "You heard the lady," the man said. "Let us move." Elias caught Vera's eye. She gave a slight nod toward the man. "Watch him." They marched for 3 hours, leading the group away from the open valley and toward a network of slot canyons that offered better cover. It was a miserable procession. The tourists were not fit for hiking. They stumbled, they complained, and they kept trying to stop for selfies. Elias fell back to walk beside the man in the white jumpsuit. "I am Elias," he said. "Dr. Aris," the man replied. "I was hired by the tour company as a safety consultant. Clearly, I did not consult hard enough." "You handle that crate like it is empty," Elias noted. "Field medic," Aris said smoothly. "Spent 10 years in the Colonial Marines before going private. You learned to carry your weight." Elias nodded, but the explanation felt rehearsed. A field medic from the Marines usually had a certain look, a weariness. Aris looked alert, his eyes constantly scanning the perimeter, checking the sight lines. He walked like a man expecting an ambush, not a doctor expecting a patient. They reached a shallow cave system just as the first sun began to set. It was not the Enclave. Vera had forbidden leading them there, but it was defensible. Elias gathered the group in the center of the cave. They looked pathetic, mud-stained, shivering, and stripped of their illusions. "All right, class is in session," Elias announced, clapping his hands. He jumped up onto a rock, assuming the persona of the Deathworld host. It was a defense mechanism, but it was also the only way to keep them calm. If they were laughing, they were not panicking. "Lesson number 1, Elias said, holding up a piece of bright orange moss he had scraped off the wall. "This is fire lichen. It looks warm and fuzzy. If you touch it, your nervous system will redline and you will spend the last 3 minutes of your life wishing you were dead. Do not touch the fuzzy things." Bex raised her hand. "What about the blue things?" "Blue is usually okay," Elias said, "unless it is vibrating. Never touch anything that vibrates unless you bought it in a store." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the group. "Lesson number 2. Elias continued, "Cardio. If you hear a clicking sound that sounds like a Geiger counter, that is a razor bat. You do not have to run faster than the bat. You just have to run faster than the person next to you." He looked at Galt. "I suggest you start stretching." "Mr. Galt!" Galt scowled, but he moved his legs. For the next hour, Elias turned survival into a stand-up routine. He taught them how to filter water using their socks. He taught them how to seal a suit breech with chewing gum. He gave them roles. Bex was in charge of noise discipline. Galt was in charge of inventory. Aris was on medical. Slowly, the group of individuals became a unit. They stopped looking at Elias like a celebrity and started looking at him like a lifeline. Vera watched from the cave entrance, her back to the group. She was scanning the dark canyon with thermal binoculars. Elias walked over to her. "You are good at that," she said quietly, not looking at him. "Manipulation? It is leadership," Elias said. "It is lying," Vera countered. "You told them they have a chance." "They do," Elias said. Vera lowered the binoculars. She turned to look at him. "There is a storm front coming. A biome shift. The temperature is going to drop 60 degrees in 20 minutes. We need to seal the cave. And the tourists, they stay in the main chamber. The body heat will help them. You and I take the forward watch in the tunnel." Elias felt a flutter in his chest that had nothing to do with the freezing temperature. "Alone? Unless you want Aris up there with us," Vera said. "I do not trust him." "Why?" "He set a splint on the influencer's ankle earlier," Vera said. It was a complex fracture. He set the bone in 10 seconds without a scanner. That is not private sector medicine. Elias, that is combat triage. He is internal security. Or worse, the biome shift hit with the force of a hammer. The temperature outside plummeted. The moisture in the air froze instantly, creating a screaming wind of ice crystals that scoured the rock face. Elias and Vera retreated into the small side tunnel that overlooked the canyon entrance. It was a cramped space, barely 4 feet high and 6 feet deep. They pulled a thermal tarp over the opening, sealing themselves in. The cold was biting. Even with their suits, the chill seeped into their bones. "We need to conserve heat," Vera said. She did not wait for an argument. She sat down and pulled Elias down beside her. She wrapped her cloak around both of them, pulling him tight against her side. It was practical. It was survival. But as Elias settled against her, the contact felt electric. He could feel the solid muscle of her arm, the rise and fall of her chest. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the wind howl outside. The small space warmed up, filled with the scent of ozone and old leather. "You were right," Elias said softly. "About Aris. I watched him organizing the supplies. He counts in military cadence." Vera rested her head back against the stone wall. "He is a plant. The coalition probably put him on the tour just in case they found you." "So he is here to kill me? Maybe. Or maybe just to confirm you are here so they can bomb the coordinates." Elias laughed dryly. "I am popular. You are dangerous," Vera said. "You make people think. The coalition hates thinking." She turned her head. Her face was inches from his. In the dim light of the instrument panel on his wrist, her eyes were pools of molten gold. "Do you regret it?" Vera asked. "The broadcast? The satire?" "No," Elias said. "It is the only thing that keeps me sane. The silence here, it eats you. If I am not talking, I am remembering. Remembering what?" "The war," Elias said. "The borders I drew on maps that turned into graveyards. I thought I was fixing things. Vera, I thought I was the smart one. But I was just moving chess pieces for men who did not care if the pawns bled." He shivered, and it was not from the cold. "I am not a hero. Vera, I am just a man who talks too much because he is afraid of the quiet." Vera shifted. Her hand moved under the cloak, finding his. Her fingers were calloused, strong. "I was a weapon," she whispered. "That is what they told me. From the time I was 6 years old. No name, just a serial number. Use the knife, hack the terminal, silence the target. I never made a choice." "Elias, not until I ran." She looked at their joined hands. "You use humor to hide your pain," she said. "I use silence. We are both broken. Elias, we are still working," Elias said. "That counts for something." He turned to face her fully. The space was so small their knees were touching. The air between them felt thick, charged with the same magnetic intensity that ruled the planet outside. Vera looked at his mouth. Her breath hitched. "This is a bad idea," she said, but she did not move away. "Terrible idea." Elias agreed. "We are exhausted, dehydrated, and being hunted. Statistically, this is the worst possible time," Vera said. Elias smiled, a genuine soft smile that had no sarcasm in it. "I hate statistics." Vera made a sound that was half sigh, half growl, and closed the distance. The kiss was not like in the movies. It was desperate. It tasted of dust and adrenaline. It was the collision of two people who had spent months expecting to die alone and had suddenly found a reason to want to live. Elias's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the sharp line of her jaw. Vera gripped the front of his flight suit, pulling him closer, anchoring him to her. There was an urgency to it, a hunger that had been suppressed by fear and discipline for too long. For a moment, the death world outside ceased to exist. The wind, the monsters, the politics, it all faded. There was only the heat of her skin, the softness of her lips, and the terrified, wonderful realization that he was falling in love with the most dangerous woman in the sector. Vera broke the kiss, gasping. She pressed her forehead against his. Elias, she breathed. He opened his eyes. He wanted to say something poetic. He wanted to promise her the stars. But Vera pulled back. Her eyes were wide, and the gold was swirling with panic. "We cannot do this," she said. "Vera, no." She scrambled backward, hitting the cave wall. "If I love you, I will prioritize you. If I prioritize you, I will make a mistake. And on this planet, mistakes are fatal." She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, her expression hardening back into the soldier's mask, but her hands were shaking. "We survive first," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We feel later." Elias reached out, then dropped his hand. He understood. He hated it, but he understood. "Okay," he said. Survive first. They sat on opposite sides of the small tunnel for the rest of the night. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was not empty. It was heavy with the things they had almost said, and the terrifying hope that they might one day get to say them. The storm broke at dawn. The ice sublimated into a thick, low-hanging fog that turned the canyons into a ghost world. They moved the tourists out early. The destination was a higher plateau where the magnetic interference was lower, giving them a chance to signal a rescue ship that wasn't trying to kill them. Elias took point. Vera took the rear, keeping a close eye on Dr. Eris. The terrain changed as they climbed. The obsidian glass gave way to a strange, porous gray rock that felt unnatural underfoot. It vibrated slightly, a low hum that Elias could feel through his boots. "Stop," Elias ordered, holding up a hand. "What is it?" Bex asked, breathless. "Look at the geometry," Elias said. He pointed to the canyon walls. The rock formation wasn't random. It was hexagonal, massive pillars of stone, fused together, forming a pattern that was too regular to be natural. "This isn't rock," Elias said. "It is concrete, or something like it." He walked over to a section of the wall where the storm had scoured away the top layer of sediment. He pulled out his knife and scraped at the surface. Sparks flew. Beneath the gray coating, there was metal, dull, dark metal with a faint purple luminescence. "It is a structure," Elias whispered. "This whole mountain. It is a building." Galt pushed forward. "A building? Who would build out here?" Elias looked at Vera. She had come up beside him, her face pale. "This is xenotech," she said. "Pre-coalition? Forbidden?" Elias looked around. The natural hazards, the gravity shears, the synchronized migrations, the biome shifts. It all made sense. It is a defense mechanism, Elias realized. Varos 9 isn't a death world by accident. It is a vault, and the planet is the security system. Suddenly, the ground beneath them lurched. A fissure opened up, not a crack in the rock, but a mechanical iris dilating. "Move!" Vera shouted, but the slope was too steep. The tourists scrambled, screaming. Elias grabbed Bex and threw her toward solid ground. He reached for Galt, but the investor slid past him. Elias lost his footing. He slid backward, toward the opening darkness. Vera lunged for him. She caught his wrist. "I got you," she grunted, digging her heels in. But the metal beneath her feet was slick. She slipped. They both tumbled down into the dark. They landed on a mesh net suspended 20 feet below the opening. It was flexible, absorbing the impact. Elias groaned and rolled over. "Are you okay?" Vera was already up, her rifle raised. Clear. Elias stood up. The air down here was stale, recycled. Emergency lights flickered on the walls, amber and red. They were in a corridor, a massive hallway large enough to drive a tank through. The walls were lined with stasis pods, thousands of them, stretching into the darkness. Elias walked up to one of the pods. The glass was frosted with age, but he could see a shape inside. It was humanoid, but it had too many limbs. Biological weapons, Elias said, his voice echoing. This is a lab, a wartime black site. This is where the Ares Consortium gets their tech, Vera said. They didn't just find this place. They built the exile colony on top of it to keep people away, to hide it in plain sight. Elias kept walking. He found a console terminal that was still active. He wiped the dust off the screen. I am accessing the logs, he said. The screen flickered. Data streamed past. Vera, look at this. These dates. This facility was active during the border wars. They were manufacturing the plagues that wiped out the Kailara colonies. The Coalition Senate denied it. They said it was a natural mutation. It was a lie, Vera said. All of it. Elias downloaded the data to his transmitter. This is it. This is the smoking gun. If we broadcast this, the entire coalition government collapses. He turned to show her, but Vera was not looking at the screen. She was looking at a symbol etched into the metal of the blast door at the end of the hall. It was a stylized eye inside a triangle. Vera? Elias asked. She walked toward the door like she was in a trance. She pulled off her glove, revealing a tattoo on the inside of her wrist. It was the same symbol. I know this place, she whispered. How? I was born here, Vera said, her voice breaking. This isn't just a weapons lab. Elias, it is a nursery. This is where they made me. Before Elias could process that, a beep sounded from his belt. It was his short-range scanner. Someone is transmitting, he said. High-frequency burst. He looked up at the mesh net above them. Through the gaps in the iris, he could see the silhouette of Dr. Eris standing on the edge, holding a high-powered comms unit. Eris was speaking into the device. Target confirmed. Elias Thorne and Asset 7 Vera are in the lower facility. They have accessed the core, requesting immediate sanitization protocols. Eris looked down through the grate, his face illuminated by the glow of the transmitter. He saw them looking up. He smiled, a cold, professional smile. Nothing personal. Thorne. Eris called down, just cleaning up the mess. He dropped a small, spherical object through the grate. It beeped as it fell. Grenade! Vera screamed. She tackled Elias, shielding his body with hers as the world exploded into white fire. The galaxy was laughing, and the Coalition Senate was terrified. On the smog-choked lower levels of Coruscant Prime, in the rebellious dockyards of the Kailara sector, and even in the hushed, gilded prep schools of the core worlds, the signal was everywhere. It played on cracked datapads and holographic billboards hijacked by hackers. It was the face of Elias Thorne, bruised and unshaven, holding up a piece of vibrating carnivorous fruit and explaining why it tasted like political corruption. They called him the Deathworld host. In 3 weeks, he had gone from a disgraced exile to a cultural icon. His survival was a defiance that resonated with every citizen who felt crushed by the Coalition's sterile, authoritarian grip. When Elias made a joke about the incompetence of the predators on Varos 9, the people understood he was really talking about the senators who had sent him there. In the high orbit of the capital, the emergency council met in a room where the air was scented with synthetic lavender to mask the smell of fear. This is not a broadcast, High Counselor Vrax spat, slamming a fist onto the obsidian table. It is an insurrection disguised as a travel blog. We have riots in 3 sectors. They are wearing T-shirts with his face on them. We cannot simply bomb the planet, a naval admiral countered. The public is watching. If we martyr him, the riots become a revolution. Then we do not kill him, Vrax said, his voice dropping to a serpentine hiss. We rescue him. We launch a humanitarian stabilization mission. We go in to secure the crash survivors and tame the planet for safe travel. And in the confusion of the rescue, accidents happen. He looked at the holographic map of Varos 9. Send Commander Korich and the Dark Ops Battalion, Vrax ordered, and tell them to bring the atmospheric stabilizers. I want that jungle burned down and paved over before the news crews arrive. 70 feet beneath the surface of the Deathworld, in a cramped ventilation shaft that smelled of ozone and ancient grease. There was no laughter. Elias Thorne hissed in pain as Vera tightened the bandage around his ribs. The explosion in the Xenotech lab had thrown them clear of the blast door. But the landing had been hard. His left side was a canvas of purple and black bruises, and he was fairly certain he had cracked a rib. Hold still, Vera murmured. Her hands were steady, her touch clinical yet surprisingly gentle. You have terrible bedside manner, Elias wheezed, leaning his head back against the cold metal wall. I am not a doctor, Vera said. I am a mechanic. I fix things so they can run again. You are currently running at 60% efficiency. She tied off the bandage and sat back on her heels. The ventilation shaft was dimly lit by the blue glow of the Xenotech conduits running along the ceiling. It was a small, intimate space, forcing them into a proximity that felt dangerous for reasons entirely unrelated to the Coalition hit squad hunting them. Elias looked at her. She had washed the dust from her face, but the exhaustion remained etched around her golden eyes. She was staring at her own hands, turning them over as if they belonged to a stranger. You saved us back there, Elias said softly. That grenade. You moved before it even cleared the grate. Reflexes, Vera said, her voice hollow. No, Elias said. That was not reflexes, that was programming. Vera went still. She looked up at him. And for a moment, the guard she always kept up crumbled. He saw the terrified girl beneath the soldier, the person who had been built in a lab to be a weapon and had spent 20 years running from the trigger. I remember this place, she whispered. The smells, the hum of the power core. They grew us in tanks. Elias, thousands of us, engineered to be faster, stronger, without empathy. When the war ended, they liquidated the project. They killed everyone. I was the only one who got out. She pulled her knees to her chest, making herself small. I am not a person, she said. I am a piece of unexploded ordnance, and the people who built me are the same ones who framed you. Elias reached out. He did not grab her. He simply placed his hand on the floor between them, palm up, an invitation. You are not ordnance, he said firmly. You are the woman who pulled a naive influencer out of a mudslide. You are the woman who sewed my flight suit because I was too clumsy to do it myself. You make choices, Vera. Weapons do not make choices. Vera looked at his hand, slowly, tentatively. She reached out and interlaced her fingers with his. Her skin was cool, his was warm. They want the data, she said. The files you downloaded from the core. It proves they were manufacturing biological weapons. It proves the Senate is war criminals. And it proves who you are, Elias realized. If we release this, everyone will know. You will be hunted by every bounty hunter in the galaxy. Vera squeezed his hand. Her grip was strong, desperate. I am already hunted, she said, but for the first time I am not running alone. She leaned forward, her forehead resting against his. The intimacy was overwhelming. It was not the frantic heat of their near kiss in the storm. It was something heavier, grounded in the quiet realization that they were the only two people in the universe who truly understood the other. They stole our lives. Elias, she whispered. They took your name and they took my humanity. Elias turned his head, his lips brushing her temple. Then we steal them back, he vowed. We burn their lies down and we do it the only way I know how. How? We make them the punchline, Elias said. 6 hours later, a new signal burst from the surface of Varos 9. It was not routed through the pirate relays this time. It was piggybacked onto the emergency beacon of the crashed tourist ship, utilizing a military-grade encryption key that Vera had pulled from her own memory. It cut through the coalition jammers like a diamond saw. The video opened with Elias sitting on a rock in the middle of a shifting crystal field. He was wearing a flower garland made of bright, poisonous orchids. He looked manic, cheerful, and utterly unbothered by the fact that he was the most wanted man in the galaxy. Hello, stargazers, Elias shouted, grinning at the camera drone. Welcome back to the Deathworld Tourist Guide. I am your host, Elias Thorne, and today we have a very special episode. We are doing an unboxing video. He reached down and picked up a heavy metallic canister stamped with the ominous red triangle of the Xenotech project. I found this little souvenir in a lovely underground gift shop just north of the magma pits, Elias said, tapping the canister. Now, the label says Class 4 neurotoxin, but I like to think of it as spicy air freshener. He juggled the canister. You see, the manufacturers, a lovely little startup called the Ares Consortium, funded by your tax credits, claim this does not exist. They say Varos 9 is just a wild planet. But if that is true, why does this canister have a serial number that matches the Senate's procurement logs from the Kaelara War? The image on the screen split. On one side, Elias juggled the toxin. On the other, a stream of documents scrolled past at high speed, invoices, genetic blueprints, and signed orders authorizing the genocide of a border colony. It was not just a leak. It was a comedy routine performed on the grave of a conspiracy. By the way, Elias added, staring directly into the lens, his smile sharpening into a blade, if you are a corporate shareholder coming to visit, I have left the front door open. But be careful. The dog bites, and the dog is very, very angry. The broadcast hit the enclave like a seismic shock. In the main cavern, the mixed species exiles gathered around the hollow table, watching the footage on loop. The mood was fracturing. He is bringing the sky down on us, shouted a four-armed scavenger named Krell. The coalition will not just send a retrieval team. They will glass the planet. We need to hand him over. No, countered the elder, a bark-skinned humanoid who had lived on Varos 9 for 20 years. He is telling the truth. For the first time, the galaxy sees us. If we give him up, we are nothing but trash again. Elias and Vera stood at the back of the cave. They had returned an hour ago to gather the tourists. Bex, the blue-haired influencer, was filming the argument with her drone, looking torn between fear and excitement. Galt, the investor, was sitting on a crate, sweating profusely and checking his chrono every 30 seconds. We have to move, Vera told Elias. The Enclave is compromised. Half of them want to sell you, the other half want to deify you, both get us killed. Elias nodded. He looked at the tourists. We take them to the high ridge. The transmission tower there is the only place we can upload the full data packet before the jammers lock us down completely. As they began to organize the group, a high-pitched whine echoed from outside. It was a sound that did not belong on Varos 9. It was the smooth, harmonious hum of gravity drives. The wind, which usually screamed through the canyon, suddenly died. The clouds parted, not naturally but severed by beams of coherent energy. Massive shapes descended from the sky. They were pristine white ships, sleek and sterile, bearing the logo of the Coalition peacekeeping force. "They are here," Vera said, unslinging her rifle. "And they brought the weather control," Elias noted, looking at the unnatural calm spreading over the valley. "They are sanitizing the battlefield." Suddenly, Galt stood up. He pulled a small, flashing beacon from his jacket pocket and threw it onto the floor in the center of the cave. "Over here!" Galt screamed, running toward the cave entrance, waving his arms at the descending ships. "I have them! I have the traitor!" Vera moved instantly. She raised her rifle, but Elias shoved her arm down. "Do not shoot him!" Elias yelled. "The cameras are watching!" Galt ran out onto the ledge, pointing back into the cave. "It is Thorn! He is in there! I demand my reward!" A white dropship hovered over the ledge. A hatch opened, but no rope came down. Instead, a heavy turret swiveled, locked onto Galt, and fired a single burst of plasma. The investor evaporated in a mist of red and steam. Humanitarian mission. Elias muttered darkly. The dropship roared, its engines flaring as it began to deploy troops. These were not standard infantry. They were heavy mechs, 12 feet tall, painted stark white, armed with crowd suppression cannons and flamethrowers. The Enclave panicked. Scavengers ran in every direction. Vera took command. The transformation was instant and terrifying. "Defensive positions," she roared, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Krell, take the left flank. Elder, get the civilians into the deep tunnels. Elias, get the tourists behind the rock wall." The exiles, terrified and confused, obeyed her. They had always known Vera was tough, but they had never seen her like this. She was a conductor of violence. The first mech landed on the ledge. Vera did not fire. She waited. She waited until the mech took a step, its massive foot coming down on a patch of loose shale she had identified days ago. "Now!" she shouted. She fired a single high-explosive round, not at the mech, but at the rock face above it. A 10-ton slab of obsidian sheared off and crashed down, crushing the mech like a tin can. But there were more. Drones swarmed into the cave, small, buzzing insects armed with tranquilizer darts and neuroshockers. Elias grabbed a heavy piece of pipe. "Stay down!" he yelled at Bex and the others. Bex was sobbing, huddled under a tarp. Eris, the undercover agent who had been revealed, was nowhere to be seen. He had likely slipped away to join his comrades. The battle for the cave was brutal and short. The corporate forces had superior tech, but the exiles had desperation. And they had Vera. She was a blur of violet motion. She moved faster than the eye could follow, sliding under mech fire, jamming EMP spikes into servo joints, using the enemy's own momentum against them. It was not fighting. It was a dance of absolute efficiency. Elias watched her from behind cover as he clubbed a drone out of the air. He felt a cold knot in his stomach. She was magnificent, and she was terrifying. This was the asset. This was the weapon that had wiped out colonies. And she was using all of that power to save a group of people who would have sold her out 5 minutes ago. "Retreat," Vera signaled. "Into the tunnels." She laid down a suppressing fire that was mathematically perfect, creating a wall of plasma that forced the corporate troops to pause. Elias ushered the last of the tourists into the dark passage. He looked back. Vera was standing alone in the center of the cave, reloading her weapon. She looked at the advancing wall of white armor. She did not look afraid. She looked resigned. "Vera!" Elias screamed. "Move!" She turned and sprinted, diving into the tunnel just as a flamethrower turned the cave entrance into an inferno. They ran through the dark, winding catacombs of the mountain, emerging an hour later on a high plateau miles away from the enclave. The group was ragged. 3 exiles were dead. The tourists were in shock. They collapsed on the gray stone, gasping for air. Below them, the valley was burning. The corporate ships were systematically torching the jungle, clearing lines of sight. Vera stood apart from the group, staring at the destruction. She was vibrating with adrenaline, her hands clenched into fists. Elias walked over to her. He reached out to touch her shoulder, but she flinched away. "Do not," she said, her voice jagged. "You saved them," Elias said. "I killed them," Vera corrected. "I killed those soldiers. I crushed them. I did not even think about it. It was just code executing." She looked at him, her eyes wide with self-loathing. "I am a monster. Elias, you saw it." Elias grabbed her shoulders and turned her to face him. "I saw a woman protecting her family," he said fiercely. "I saw a hero." "Hero?" Vera laughed, a bitter, cracking sound. "Heroes do not move like that. Killers move like that." Before Elias could answer, a voice boomed across the plateau. It was amplified, coming from a massive command shuttle that had just crested the ridge. "Attention!" The shuttle descended slowly, its engines kicking up a storm of dust. It landed 50 yards away. The ramp lowered. A squad of elite guards marched out, forming a phalanx. Behind them walked a man in a pristine officer's uniform. He was older, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from marble. Commander Korich, the butcher of the Kailara sector. Elias recognized him instantly. He had written speeches for this man. Vera stiffened. She stepped in front of Elias, raising her rifle. "Hold your fire. Asset 7, Korich said smoothly. His voice was calm, conversational. He stopped 10 paces away, ignoring the weapon pointed at his chest. He looked at Elias. "Mr. Thorne, you look terrible. The rustic life does not suit you." "I do not know," Elias said, stepping out from behind Vera. "I think the rugged look is trending." Korich smiled. It was a smile that did not reach his eyes. "You have caused quite a mess. Elias, the Senate is very upset, but I am a pragmatic man. I see an opportunity." He gestured to the burning valley below. "We can end this right now. No more death, no more running." "What is the offer?" Elias asked. Korich clasped his hands behind his back. "Total exoneration. We will issue a statement claiming your exile was a deep cover operation to uncover a pirate ring. You will be reinstated with full rank. Back pay. A penthouse in the capital. You will be a hero, Elias, the man who tamed the Deathworld." Elias raised an eyebrow. "And the price?" Korich's eyes flicked to Vera. "Give me the drive with the xenotech data," Korich said, "and give me the asset." Vera went rigid. "She is malfunctioning," Korich said, as if discussing a broken toaster. "She is dangerous. We need to decommission her. Hand her over, give us the files, and you go home on my personal shuttle. Champagne is already on ice." Elias looked at Korich. Then he looked at Vera. She was not looking at him. She was staring at the ground, her body tense, waiting for the betrayal she had expected her entire life. She knew the logic. One life for a future, one broken weapon for a restored career. It was the strategic choice. Elias felt the weight of the moment. The silence on the plateau was heavier than the gravity. He looked back at Korich. "That is a very generous offer," Elias said slowly. He took a step toward the commander. "Total exoneration?" "Total," Korich confirmed. "And all I have to do is give you the woman who saved my life and the truth that saves the galaxy?" "Precisely. It is a simple calculation. Mr. Thorne." Elias smiled. It was the smile of the Deathworld host, reckless, sharp, and utterly fearless. You are right, Commander, Elias said. It is a simple calculation. He reached into his pocket. Korik held out his hand. Elias pulled out his hand. Empty. The calculation is that you can go to hell, Elias said. Korik sighed. A pity. He snapped his fingers. Kill them all, Korik ordered. Vera moved. She did not shoot Korik. She grabbed Elias, spun him around, and threw him over the edge of the plateau into the river below, diving in after him just as the air where they had been standing turned into superheated plasma. The river had been cold enough to stop a heart, but the rage burning in Elias Thorne's chest kept his blood moving. They had washed ashore 3 miles downstream, coughing up brackish water and shivering in the mud. The canyon walls towered above them, shielding them from the immediate sensors of Commander Korik's fleet, but the reprieve was temporary. Above the cloud layer, white dropships were prowling like sharks, waiting for a thermal signature to lock onto. Vera sat on a flat rock, wringing out her hair. She looked smaller without her armor, which she had shed in the water to stay afloat. Her undersuit was torn, revealing the pale violet skin beneath, marked with scars that told a history of violence she had never chosen. We have 6 hours, Vera said, her voice raspy. Maybe 7. Korik will establish a perimeter. He will seal the sector. Then he will burn it. Elias stood up, wiping mud from his face. He looked at the data pad he had managed to keep waterproofed in his pocket. The screen was cracked, but the camera still worked. Then we have 6 hours to start a fire he cannot put down, Elias said. He did not look like a strategist anymore. He looked like a wild thing, eyes bright with fever and determination. He propped the data pad against a stone, framing a shot of the desolate, beautiful canyon behind him. Vera watched him. What are you doing? I am changing the genre, Elias said. We are done with the comedy. Now we do the war documentary. He hit record. The broadcast did not open with a joke. It opened with silence. For 10 seconds, the galaxy saw only Elias's face, stripped of its usual mockery. He looked exhausted. He looked human. They told you this was a prison, Elias said, his voice low and steady. They told you the people here were monsters. They told you the planet was a chaotic hellscape that needed to be tamed. He picked up the camera and turned it. He did not point it at himself. He pointed it at a small, shivering creature huddled under a fern, a scavenger child, one of the mixed species exiles who had survived the attack on the cave. The child was sharing a piece of ration bar with a wounded reptilian elder. Look at them, Elias said. This is what the Senate calls a threat. This is what Commander Korik is here to eradicate. The camera panned to the jungle itself. You think the predators here are the animals? Elias asked. No. The animals just want to eat. That is honest. That is nature. The real predators wear white uniforms and sit in climate-controlled offices on Ethelgard. They engineered this world to kill us. And now that we refuse to die, they have come to finish the job. He turned the camera back to himself. They want to erase the witnesses. They want to bury the truth under a parking lot and a gift shop. But we are still here. And we are still laughing. Not because it is funny, but because laughter is the sound of people who refuse to be afraid. He leaned in close. If you are watching this, you are the jury. Commander Korik has given us an ultimatum. Surrender the truth and live as slaves, or keep the truth and die as free people. We made our choice. Now you have to make yours. The signal went out. It bounced through the pirate relays, skipped across the trade routes, and landed like a hammer blow on 1,000 worlds. In the factories of the core, workers stopped their machines to watch. In the Senate chambers, aides whispered frantically to their superiors. The narrative was slipping. Elias Thorne was not just a survivor anymore. He was a mirror, and the reflection was ugly. On Varos 9, the response was immediate. The scattered Enclave factions who had been hiding in the deep tunnels heard the call. They began to move, not away from the danger, but toward it. "We need the proof," Vera said. She was checking the charge on her rifle, her movements precise again, the soldier re-emerging from the shock. Elias's broadcast had rallied the troops, but rallies did not stop orbital bombardments. They needed the hard data, the specific logs that detailed the engineered deaths of the witnesses who had been sent here before Elias. "The logs are on the Aegis," Vera said, pointing to the massive command ship hovering over the burning plateau. "That is Korek's flagship. The central server will have the purge orders. It is a fortress," Elias said. "You cannot just walk in." "I know the codes," Vera said. "I built the security protocols for that class of ship 20 years ago. It is a back door, a maintenance airlock on the ventral hull." "It is suicide," Elias said. "It is redemption," Vera countered. She looked at him. There was no argument in her eyes, only a quiet certainty. "I need you to lead the others," she said. "The tourists, the exiles. You have to get them to the control node." The control node was the heart of the planet's artificial ecosystem, the buried machine city that regulated the gravity shears and the storms. If they could reach it, they could potentially lock Korek out of the environmental controls. "I will get the data," Vera said. "You get them to safety. We meet at the node." Elias wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her that he would not let her go alone. But he was a strategist. He knew she was right. She was the only one who could infiltrate the ship. He was the only one who could keep the ragtag army together. "Be careful," he said, the words feeling inadequate. Vera paused. She reached out and touched his chest, her hand lingering over his heart. "Don't die before breakfast," she said softly. Then she was gone, slipping into the shadows like a ghost. The infiltration was a study in silence. Vera moved through the maintenance shafts of the Aegis like smoke. She bypassed sensors, looped camera feeds, and neutralized 2 guards with nerve pinches before they could even draw a breath. She reached the server room. It was a cold, sterile place, humming with the noise of a million secrets. She jacked into the terminal. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface. She found it. Project Silence. It was a list. Thousands of names. Political dissidents, whistleblowers, inconvenient witnesses, all exiled to Varos 9, all marked as casualties of environment. But the logs showed the truth. Subject 409, eliminated by gravity shear induction. Subject 512, eliminated by predator lure deployment. They weren't accidents. They were executions. And then she saw the final file. It was encrypted with a clearance level she had never seen before. Protocol Omega. She decrypted it. The text scrolled across her retina display. "Upon containment breach, initiate Protocol Omega. Total planetary sterilization via atmospheric ignition. Target all biological life. Purpose, asset denial." Vera froze. They weren't just going to kill the exiles. They were going to burn the atmosphere. They were going to turn Varos 9 into a dead rock to hide what they had done. She downloaded everything. Meanwhile, in the twisted labyrinth of the Razor Forest, Elias was trying to lead a revolution. The group was a mess. Bex, the influencer, was limping. The tourists were terrified. The exiles were angry. "Listen to me," Elias shouted over the wind. "We are not running away. We are running toward the only thing that can save us." The control node was 10 miles away, across the shattered plains, a biome where the ground shifted like ocean waves and the magnetic sand could crush a vehicle. "We cannot make it," said a tourist named Harlan, a wealthy banker who had lost his shoes 3 miles back. It is impossible. Impossible is just a lack of imagination, Elias said. He looked at the exiles. You know how to ride the sand skiffs. The reptilian scavenger nodded. Yes, but we have no skiffs. Elias pointed to the wreckage of a corporate drone that had crashed in the trees. We have parts, Elias said. What followed was a montage of desperate ingenuity. Under Elias's direction, the tourists and exiles worked together. The banker used his expensive silk tie to bind pipes. The influencer used her drone's battery to jumpstart the engines. The exiles used their strength to bend the metal plating. In 2 hours, they built 3 ugly, rattling, magnificent hover sleds. Courage, Elias told them as they tightened the last bolts, is not about not being scared. It is about being terrified and doing the job anyway. You are not tourists anymore. You are the crew. Bex wiped grease from her cheek. She looked at Elias. She nodded. We are the crew, she repeated. Vera met them at the edge of the shattered plains. She had stolen a drop pod from the Aegis and crashed it with controlled precision. She stumbled out, clutching the data drive. Elias ran to her. He caught her before she fell. I got it, she gasped. I have the proof. But Elias, they are going to burn the planet. Protocol Omega. It starts in 1 hour. Elias looked at the sky. It was already turning a sickly, bruised purple. The clouds were swirling into a vortex above the distant mountain range where the control node lay buried. Then we have 1 hour to reach the node and shut it down, Elias said. The night before the final run, they took shelter in a small cave near the edge of the plains. The storm outside was building, a prelude to the apocalypse. The others were sleeping, exhausted. Elias and Vera sat near the entrance, watching the lightning arc across the glass desert. They were both battered. They were dirty. They were running on fumes, but as they sat there, the space between them collapsed. Elias looked at her. He saw the woman who had carried the weight of a galaxy's sins on her shoulders for 20 years. You came back, he said softly. I had to, Vera said. She turned to him. The barrier she had kept up, the soldier's discipline, the spy's distance, finally broke. Her eyes were wet. I do not want to die. Elias, for the first time in my life, I actually want to see what happens next. Elias reached out and took her face in his hands. His thumbs brushed away the grime on her cheeks. We are going to see it, he promised. We are going to build a house on this rock. We are going to have a garden. And we are going to charge admission to anyone who wants to see the woman who defeated an empire. Vera laughed. It was a watery, shaky sound. You are ridiculous. I am hopeful, Elias said. He leaned in. This time, there was no hesitation, no frantic adrenaline. It was slow. It was deliberate. When he kissed her, it was a question and an answer all at once. It was a claiming. I see you. I know what you are, and I choose you. Vera made a sound in her throat and pulled him closer. She kissed him like she was breathing him in. There was fear in it, yes, but there was also a profound, aching tenderness. Two people who had been hollowed out by the world, finding that they could fill each other up. They held each other in the dark, body against body, heartbeat against heartbeat. There were no grand declarations, just the warmth of another human being in a cold universe. If we burn, Vera whispered against his neck, we burn together. No, Elias said, resting his chin on her head. We do not burn. We are the fire. The morning brought the end of the world. The sky was screaming. Sirens wailed from the corporate ships orbiting above. The ground shook as the tectonic stabilizers began to disengage. Protocol Omega initiated. A mechanical voice boomed from the heavens. Biohazard containment in T-minus 40 minutes. "Mount up!" Elias shouted. The convoy of makeshift hover sleds roared to life. Elias and Vera took the lead sled. The exiles and tourists piled onto the others. They shot out across the shattered plains. It was a race through a nightmare. The ground heaved and buckled. Geysers of acidic steam erupted from the sand. "To the left!" Vera shouted, hauling on the steering yoke. They swerved around a massive sinkhole that opened up to swallow a patch of razor grass. Behind them, white pursuit drones dropped from the clouds. Lasers strafed the sand, turning the glass to slag. "Bex!" Elias yelled into his comms. "Now!" In the second sled, Bex launched her camera drone, but this time, she had rigged it with a seismic charge they had scavenged. She flew the drone straight into the intake of the lead pursuit craft. "Say cheese!" Bex screamed. The drone exploded. The pursuit craft shuddered and slammed into the ground, tumbling in a ball of fire. The tourists cheered. The banker was throwing rocks at the remaining drones. The poodle was barking. "They are learning," Vera said, a grim smile touching her lips. They reached the base of the mountain. The entrance to the control node was a massive blast door, sealed tight. Vera jumped off the sled. "Look, cover me." She ran to the control panel. Elias and the others formed a perimeter. The corporate forces were landing. Mechs dropped from the sky, shaking the earth. "Hold the line," Elias ordered. He picked up a plasma rifle he had taken from a dead soldier. He was a strategist, not a soldier. But today he was whatever Vera needed him to be. He fired, taking down a drone. Next to him, the reptilian exile fired a crossbow loaded with explosive bolts. Vera worked the panel. Her hands moved in a blur. Come on," she muttered. The door hissed. It groaned. It began to open. "Inside!" Elias shouted. They scrambled through the opening just as a barrage of missiles slammed into the mountainside. The blast door sealed behind them, cutting off the roar of the battle. Silence. They were in the heart of the machine. The control node was a vast, spherical chamber. In the center, suspended over a bottomless pit, was a pillar of pulsing blue light. The interface. "We made it," Bex whispered. Vera did not celebrate. She walked toward the interface. She looked at the readouts. 17 minutes until atmospheric ignition, she said. She stepped onto the bridge that led to the central pillar. "I have to interface directly," she said. "I need to override the command codes." She reached the pillar. She placed her hand on the panel. The room turned red. Unauthorized access. The system announced, "DNA verification required." Vera froze. She looked at her hand. The panel was scanning her. Subject identified, Asset 7. Welcome home. The red light turned to amber. Elias ran out onto the bridge. "And what is happening?" Vera stared at the screen. Her face went pale. "The purge protocol," she said, her voice trembling. "It is not just a command. It is a biological lock." She looked at Elias. "They designed it so that only a prime asset could activate or deactivate it. It is keyed to my genetic sequence." "Okay," Elias said. "So turn it off." Vera shook her head. Tears welled in her eyes. "To deactivate the protocol, the system requires a complete biological integration. It needs to rewrite the command using the source DNA as a template." "What does that mean?" Elias asked, stepping closer. "It means the process consumes the source," Vera whispered. Elias stopped. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Consumes?" "It breaks down the genetic material to build the code," Vera said. "It kills the subject." She looked at the timer. T-minus 9 minutes. "I have to do it." "Elias, it is the only way to stop the ignition." If I don't, everyone on this planet dies. You, the tourists, the Enclave. No, Elias said. He grabbed her shoulders. No, we find another way. We hack it. There is no time to hack it, Vera shouted. The encryption is too complex. She tried to pull away, but Elias held her tight. I did not fall in love with you to watch you die, he yelled. Vera went still. She looked up at him. You love me? She asked softly. Elias stared at her. Yes, I love you. I love your broken parts. I love your silence. I love you. Vera closed her eyes. A tear tracked through the dirt on her face. Then let me save you, she whispered. She moved so fast he didn't see it coming. She shoved him backward, hard. Elias stumbled and fell. Vera hit the button on the bridge control. The section of the walkway between them retracted. Vera! Elias screamed, scrambling to the edge. She stood on the central platform, isolated. The blue light of the pillar bathed her in a ghostly glow. She looked at him across the gap. Get them to the deep tunnels. Elias, she said. Once the protocol is disabled, the system will reset. It will be violent. You need to be underground. Do not do this, Elias pleaded. Open the bridge. Vera turned to the console. She placed both hands on the interface. Needles extended from the machine, piercing her skin. She gasped. Integration sequence initiated. Vera looked back at him one last time. She smiled. It was the saddest, most beautiful thing Elias had ever seen. Send back a good story. Elias, she said. She closed her eyes. The machine began to hum, a rising note that vibrated in the marrow of their bones. The blue light turned blinding white, enveloping her figure. Elias screamed her name, but the sound was lost in the roar of the machine as the countdown ticked toward 0. The white light of the integration chamber was blinding, a roaring silence that threatened to swallow the world. Elias Thorne stood on the edge of the retracted bridge, his face illuminated by the terrifying radiance of the woman he loved dissolving into code. He looked at the console near his hand. He looked at the timer counting down the death of the planet. And then he looked at the transmitter link Vera had established before she stepped into the fire. She was sacrificing herself to shut down the machine. She was acting like the weapon they had made her to be, a disposable asset spent to secure a target. No, Elias said, the word tearing from his throat. Not today. He did not try to hack the encryption. Vera was right. There was no time. Instead, he did the one thing he had done better than anyone else in the galaxy for the last 10 years. He changed the narrative. He grabbed the hardline cable from the console and jammed it into his datapad. He routed the connection not to the machine's core, but to its broadcast array. This was a command node. It had the power to reach every satellite, every ship, and every receiving device in the sector. He punched the activation key. The holographic emitters in the room flared to life, projecting his face 10 feet high. But he wasn't just projecting to the room. He was projecting to the Aegis in orbit. He was projecting to the capital. He was projecting to every datapad on every street corner from the core worlds to the rim. If you are going to burn us, Elias snarled at the camera lens, looking like a demon rising from the pit, then you are going to look us in the eye while you do it. The broadcast hijacked the galaxy. One moment, the citizens of Ethelgard were watching a debate on tariff regulations. The next, every screen turned static gray, replaced by the blood-streaked, furious face of the Deathworld host. This is the series finale, Elias announced, his voice booming with a clarity that cut through the static. He tapped the screen. You were told Varos 9 was a prison for criminals. You were lied to. It is a graveyard for the innocent. And right now, the Senate is trying to cremate the bodies. He uploaded the files Vera had stolen, in real time, The galaxy saw the documents, the signatures of High Counselor Vrax authorizing the biological experiments, the architectural blueprints of the engineered tectonic plates, the lists of names, thousands of them, people who had vanished, now confirmed as test subjects for weapons manufacturing. "This is not a containment protocol," Elias shouted, pointing to the countdown timer on the screen behind him. "This is a cover-up. They are burning the atmosphere to hide their crimes. They are murdering us to save their careers." On the bridge of the Aegis, the crew froze. They watched the screens. They looked at the orders on their tactical displays. Protocol Omega, Target, Civilian Enclave. Then they looked at the signatures on the documents Elias was streaming. The bridge officer, a young lieutenant with a family back on the Corps, turned to his captain. "Sir," he said, his voice shaking, "these coordinates, they match the refugee shelters. We are targeting non-combatants. Maintain fire discipline." Commander Korik's voice barked over the comms. "That is enemy propaganda. It is not propaganda." Elias's voice thundered from the speakers. "It is the ledger, and you are all in the red." Inside the pillar of light, Vera was screaming without sound. The machine was tearing her apart. It was searching for the command sequence in her DNA, unspooling her genetic code like a thread. It tried to reduce her to a serial number. Asset 7. Weapon. Tool. But Vera was not just a sequence of amino acids anymore. She was the memory of a hand holding hers in the dark. She was the taste of rain on a glass mountain. She was the sound of Elias laughing at a monster. She refused to be read. Instead, she began to write. She pushed back against the system, flooding the logic gates with data the machine could not process. She fed it the chaotic, messy, illogical patterns of her own humanity. She forced the system to read her not as a key, but as a virus. "I am not Asset 7, she thought, projecting the intent with every ounce of her will. "I am Vera, and I quit." The blue light of the pillar began to fracture. It turned violet. The hum of the machine changed from a steady drone to a discordant screech. Outside the mountain, the battle had turned into a slaughter. The corporate mechs were advancing, their flamethrowers turning the jungle into ash. The exiles were pinned down. But then, Elias's voice echoed from the sky. "Attention, tourists and residents. This is your host speaking. We have a slight change in the itinerary." Elias was watching the tactical feed from the control node. He could see the enemy movements. He could see the weak points. "If you look to your left, you will notice the white mechs have a vulnerability in the intake manifold located under the armpit," Elias narrated, his tone shifting into that manic, helpful guide persona. "It is a terrible design flaw. A single explosive bolt right there will turn them into very expensive lawn ornaments." In the trench, the reptilian scavenger Krell heard the voice. He looked at the mech looming over him. He aimed his crossbow. Under the armpit, he grunted. He fired. The bolt struck the intake. The mech shuddered, sparked, and collapsed in a heap of smoking metal. "And for those of you near the geyser fields," Elias continued, "tip number 42, the magnetic sand becomes unstable when hit with sonic resonance. If you have a concussive grenade, now would be a lovely time to throw it." Bex, the influencer, was huddled behind a rock with Dr. Eris, who had been captured by the exiles and forced to help. She looked at him. "Throw it!" she screamed. Eris threw the grenade. The explosion triggered a chain reaction in the sand. The ground liquefied beneath the advancing tank column. 3 massive war machines sank into the earth, their treads spinning uselessly. Then it was chaos, then it was madness. It was the most effective military counteroffensive in the history of the Outer Rim. Elias was turning the planet itself into a weapon, using the very hazards designed to kill them to crush the invaders. In the control node, The countdown hit 30 seconds. The machine was fighting back, trying to burn Vera out of the system. Elias dropped the datapad. He ran to the edge of the pit. "Vera, come back!" The pillar of light exploded. A shockwave of energy blasted outward, knocking Elias flat. The screens in the room shattered. The red emergency lights died. Silence returned. Elias scrambled up, his ears ringing. He looked at the central platform. The blue light was gone. The machine was dark, and lying in the center of the platform, curled into a ball, was Vera. The bridge slowly extended, the system resetting to its default state. Elias ran across it. He fell to his knees beside her. She was not moving. Her skin was gray, the violet luster gone. Smoke curled from her suit. "Vera," Elias whispered. He touched her neck. Nothing. "No," Elias said. "No, you do not get to do this. You do not get to leave me alone in this story." He pressed his hands to her chest and began compressions. "Breathe!" he shouted. "Breathe, damn you!" He worked for a minute, 2 minutes. The silence stretched, heavy and final. Then, a gasp. Vera arched her back, sucking in air with a desperate, ragged sound. She coughed, rolling onto her side. Elias slumped back, his hands shaking uncontrollable. She opened her eyes. The gold was dim, but it was there. Did I miss breakfast?" she wheezed. Elias laughed. It was a sob disguised as a laugh. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her smoky hair. "You canceled the apocalypse," he said. "That counts as breakfast." Vera leaned against him, weak but alive. "I overwrote the protocol. I replaced the kill command with a loop of that stupid song you hum when you are cooking." Elias smiled through his tears. "It is a classic." The victory was not clean, but it was absolute. On the surface, the corporate forces had stopped firing. The soldiers had seen the broadcast. They had seen the signatures. And when the order came from Korik to continue the purge, the captains of the 3 lead battalions had refused. "We are not executioners," one captain transmitted on the open channel. "We are standing down." But the war was not over. The blast door to the control node hissed open. Elias and Vera looked up. Commander Korik strode in, flanked by 4 loyal elite guards in black armor. He looked immaculate, untouched by the chaos outside. But his eyes were wild. He was a man watching his future burn, and he intended to take the arsonists with him. "You think this changes anything?" Korik sneered, his voice echoing in the cavern. "You think a few pictures on a screen will stop the Senate? They will spin this. They will say you faked it, and they will bury you in this hole." He drew his service pistol, a sleek, silver weapon designed for executions. "Kill them." Korik ordered his guards. The guards raised their rifles, but before they could fire, a holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room. It originated from the comms array Elias had hacked. "Stand down." "Commander." The voice was cold, authoritative, and terrifyingly familiar. A figure materialized in blue light. It was High Counselor Vrax, but he was not alone. Behind him stood the Admiral of the Reformist Fleet and a dozen independent journalists. "The broadcast has been verified," the Admiral said. "We have the fleet in orbit. Commander, your ships have surrendered." Korik looked at the hologram, then at Elias. His hand shook. "This is a mistake," Korik said. "I was following orders. Your orders. Counselor." "I gave no such orders," Vrax said smoothly, his lizard eyes unblinking. "You have gone rogue, Commander." A tragic mental break caused by the stress of deep space. Elias watched the betrayal happen in real time. The snake was eating its own tail. Korik roared in incoherent rage. He swung the pistol toward Elias. Vera moved. She was weak, battered, and barely able to stand, but she was still the fastest thing in the room. She lunged, not for Korik, but for the guard nearest her. She grabbed the barrel of his rifle, twisted it, and used the momentum to kick the guard into Korik. The commander stumbled, his shot going wide, sparking off the metal floor. Vera snatched the pistol from Korik's hand. In one fluid motion, she had him on his knees, the silver barrel pressed against his forehead. The room froze. "Do it," Korik hissed, looking up at her. "Finish it. Asset. Prove you are what we made you." Vera's finger tightened on the trigger. Her breathing was hard. This was the man who had ordered her creation, the man who had ordered her death. Every instinct in her body screamed for vengeance. It would be so easy. It would be justice. Elias stood up. He did not move to stop her. He watched her. "Vera," he said softly. Vera looked at Korik. She saw the fear in his eyes, but more than that, she saw the emptiness. He was just a man, a pathetic, cruel man who had lost everything. If she killed him, she was the weapon. If she let him live, she was the judge. She exhaled slowly. The tension left her shoulders. "No," she said. She pulled the gun back and pistol-whipped him across the face. Korik collapsed unconscious. "I am not your asset," Vera said to the slumped form. "And I am not your executioner. I am a citizen of this planet. And we have laws about taking out the trash." She looked at the hologram of the High Counselor. "He is yours," Vera said. "Come and collect him. But send a polite ship. We are tired of the noise." The fallout lasted for months. The Varos incident became the catalyst for the greatest political upheaval the coalition had seen in 3 centuries. The Senate was purged, not by fire, but by inquiries and trials. The reformist bloc swept the elections. 3 weeks after the battle, a sleek diplomatic shuttle landed on the newly cleared landing pad of the Enclave. An envoy stepped out. He carried a data pad and a velvet box. He found Elias and Vera sitting on the edge of the canyon, watching the sun set over the glass forest. The forest was still dangerous, still sharp, but it was beautiful in the dying light. "Mr. Thorne," the envoy said, bowing low. "The coalition owes you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Elias did not stand up. He was whittling a piece of driftwood. "Keep the change." The envoy cleared his throat. "I am here to convey the Senate's official decree. Your exile is nullified. Your rank is restored. You are offered the position of High Strategic Advisor to the new Chancellor. And..." He opened the velvet box. Inside lay the Star of Athelgard, the highest honor for bravery. "And this, for the lady," the envoy said, "along with a full pardon and a commission in the new security forces." Vera looked at the medal. It glittered like the city that had tried to kill her. Elias stopped whittling. He looked at the envoy. Then he looked at the valley below. He saw the smoke rising from the Enclave, where the exiles and the tourists were rebuilding together. He saw Bex filming a documentary about the reptilian scavengers. He saw a world that was hard, dangerous, and utterly real. He looked at Vera. She was watching him, her golden eyes calm. She knew what he was going to say. She had known since the moment he refused to let go of her hand in the machine. "Tell the Chancellor I am busy," Elias said. The envoy blinked. "Busy? Doing what?" Elias gestured to the planet. "We are busy filing the paperwork," Elias said. "We are declaring Varos 9 an autonomous zone, a sanctuary for the displaced, the unwanted, and the people who just want to be left alone." "You are refusing the restoration?" the envoy asked. Stunned. "You could have power, but you could have comfort." "I have a job," Elias said. "I am the guide, and the tour isn't over." He stood up and took the velvet box. He snapped it shut and handed it back. Take this back. Melt it down. Use the money to buy life support systems for the Outer Rim colonies. And the pardon? The envoy asked Vera. Vera smiled. It was a smile that reached her eyes. I do not need your pardon, she said. I forgave myself. The envoy left. The ship rose into the sky and disappeared. Elias and Vera sat back down on the rock. The wind picked up, carrying the familiar scent of ozone and magnetic dust. You turned down a penthouse, Vera noted. The plumbing was terrible, Elias said. Besides, the neighbors were boring. He put his arm around her. She leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. The scars on her hands were fading, but they would never be gone, just like the scars on the planet. So, Elias said, autonomous zone. That sounds like a lot of work. We need a constitution. We need a trade agreement. We need dinner, Vera said. Dinner first. Elias agreed. Then we build a nation. They watched the sun dip below the horizon. The first moon rose, casting a silver light over the jagged landscape. It didn't look like a death world anymore. It looked like a challenge. It looked like a home. Epilogue. The sign at the spaceport was hand-painted, bolted to a piece of scavenged hull plating. It read, Welcome to Varos 9. Try not to die. But if you do, make it a good story. Below the sign, the market was bustling. It was a strange bazaar. Wealthy thrill-seekers from the core mingled with four-armed scavengers. They traded stories, they traded tech, and they traded jokes. The planet was still lethal, the storms still raged, and the predators still hunted. But the fear was gone. It had been replaced by a gritty, cheerful respect for the danger. In a small house built into the side of the cliff, overlooking the valley, Elias sat at a desk. He was older now. The gray in his hair was claiming victory over the brown. He was recording the final entry of the Deathworld tourist guide. We spend our lives trying to build walls, Elias said into the microphone. We try to keep the danger out. We try to keep the pain out, but the walls just keep us in the dark. He looked out the window. Vera was in the garden, teaching a group of children, human and alien, how to identify the safe berries. She looked up, felt his gaze, and waved. Her hand was missing the pinky finger, lost in the final battle, but she waved it like a flag. Systems can exile your body, Elias said, his voice soft. They can strip your rank. They can take your name, but they cannot exile your dignity. That is something you carry with you. It is the thing that lets you laugh when the lights go out. He smiled. This is Elias Thorne, signing off. The tour is over. Now go find your own way home. He clicked the transmitter off. He stood up, walked out the door, and went to join his wife in the garden. The suns were warm, the air was sharp, and for the first time in 100 years, the galaxy was listening.